Bradford's Lum Lane, 11:45 p.m. Friday, July 14th, 2017. The city had gone silent. Streets still, walkways empty. But in the quiet, one phone line wouldn't stop ringing. A relentless call, echoing through the night. Miles away in Manchester, inside a perfectly ordinary home, a darker secret was growing. Behind a wardrobe door, in tins, carefully hidden from sight, a different kind of business was thriving. And years later, in a damp Bradford basement, detectives would find something so cleverly disguised, it released gas the moment they turned the valve. 3 very different scenes, one single, corrosive thread. The trade that poisoned streets across the UK. This is the story of Bradford's Sully Line, a Manchester couple's hidden empire, and the police operation that finally blew it apart. The Sully Line materialized in 2012, a ghost in the system, barely a whisper. It started as just a simple string of digits, but that number metastasized, evolving into Bradford's most dependable and infamous conduit for heroin and crack cocaine. Its epicenter was Manningham, anchored on Lum Lane, a neighborhood already scarred and known to police for its rampant drug activity. From this foothold, the operation ballooned into a dominant supply artery, one that would dictate the brutal terms of the local drug market for years to come. The business model was brutally simple and ruthlessly effective. Investigators would later dub it ring and bring. Customers dialed the line, placed their order, and within minutes, a runner was dispatched for the anonymous meat. No names, no faces, just a brief call, a fleeting exchange, and the transaction was complete. For the users, it offered chilling dependability. For its masters, it was a machine engineered for perpetual, uninterrupted profit, 24/7. At the apex of this criminal enterprise were 3 men, the architects of the operation. Each held a distinct dominion, but all shared the burden of keeping the illicit business breathing. Mohammed Ayaz, from Undercliff, was a leading organizational force. His own brother, Mohammed Hassan, was just as deeply entrenched, the 2 siblings ruling side by side. Flanking them was Tassawar Aslam, another trusted lieutenant who formed the 3rd pillar of the line's command. Together, they ensured continuous, unbroken oversight by rotating their command shifts. One would seize control during the day, another would shepherd the operation through the darkness. They weren't the ones glued to the phone. Their role was strategic, ensuring the line, the supply, and the dealers below them moved in perfect, unending lockstep. This leadership framework gave the network its formidable stability. By 2017, the Sully Line was more than a number. It was an institution, and Bradford was its captive market. But no empire runs on its kings alone. Beneath them moved the others, the hidden hands, the couriers, the street-level dealers. And it was through them that the true, terrifying scale of the Sully Line would finally be dragged into the light. From the stash houses where narcotics were stockpiled to the hands that made the final toxic pass-off on the streets, every player had a purpose. United, they kept the line alive, hour after relentless hour, after sordid deal. Among the most crucial was Amir Rahman, the Storeman. Positioned on Lum Lane itself, he was entrusted with safeguarding the inventory, heroin and crack, meticulously prepared and primed for sale. His home was converted into a warehouse, and for his vital role, he drew a steady wage, receiving hundreds of pounds weekly to keep the supplies secure and ready for immediate dispatch. Then there was Shiraz Mahmood, the network's technical wizard. His domain was not physical, but digital. He kept the Sully Line breathing by maintaining its complex communications, constantly swapping SIM cards, diverting calls, and ensuring that the instant one number was compromised, a new one was activated to take its place. For a business that lived and died by the ring of a phone, his work was indispensable. Beneath this command structure were the foot soldiers, the ones who physically delivered the poison to the users. Harim Hussein, barely out of her teens at the time, was one of them. She ferried orders across Bradford, often chauffeured by Mohammed Vaneed Khan, who acted as her driver. Others, like Mohammed Zahed from Leeds and Mohammed Asfan from Bradford, were also part of this retail layer, slinging wraps on the ground to the desperate customers who called the line. The network's tendrils pulled from a wide pool. David Coates, a former soldier, found himself distributing on the line's behalf. Shahzad Salim, another local, was linked to the supply runs, while Lukman Nazir was tied to the operation through his involvement in coordinating the deals. Even Malachi Hodgson, a gifted young footballer with a bright future, became tragically entangled, playing his own part in the supply chain. Together, these individuals formed the broad base of the pyramid. The hierarchy was crystal clear: directors at the top, logistics in the middle, and the street-level operatives closing the chain of addiction. We've witnessed how the Sully Line was constructed. This rigid structure gave the operation its resilience. Yet, the very mechanisms designed to make it efficient also etched patterns into the digital landscape that became impossible to ignore. The Sully Line was a 24-hour beast. Orders were placed at any time, day or night, fueling hundreds of transactions every single day. Between July 2017 and August 2018, investigators would later calculate that the line had processed a staggering 229,000 calls. On paper, that volume might blend into the noise of ordinary phone traffic, but in the charged context of Lum Lane, it told a damning story. The first alarms came from the community itself, as residents and members in Manningham began reporting the constant suspicious activity linked to the area. Lum Lane was already notorious for drugs, but this was different. The pace of activity was frenetic, relentless, and far beyond the scope of anything officers had previously encountered. From those initial grassroots reports, police attention pivoted to call data. Detectives traced the flurry of activity back to one single number: the Sully Line. What they discovered was a clear fingerprint: thousands of short, repetitive calls, often originating from public phone boxes, always answered, and always rerouted the moment a SIM was changed. Despite the technical countermeasures, Shiraz Mahmoud's tactics became a glaring red flag for the police. Instead of rendering the operation invisible, his tactics painted a target on its back. This organization was leaving a footprint, and every trace pulled investigators one step closer. The Sully Line had been engineered to feel untouchable, and for years it had maintained that illusion. But by the close of 2017, the walls were already closing in. With the Sully Line firmly in their sights, the daunting task of dismantling it fell to the West Yorkshire Police Organised Crime Unit. They knew instantly this was no simple street corner hustle. It was layered, organised, and deliberately insulated. To tear it down, they had to prove its immense scale, definitively tie individuals to their specific roles, and seize the hard evidence that proved the line was a sophisticated criminal enterprise, not just a phone number. Surveillance was the opening move. Detectives meticulously tracked the flow of people and vehicles around Lum Lane and beyond. Watching the comings and goings tethered to the hotline, they monitored how orders cascaded down the chain, from calls placed to the line, through the storeman, and out to the street-level dealers. The rhythm was mechanical, too precise to be coincidence. In parallel with the surveillance, officers began seizing phones and SIM cards. Every capture painted a clearer portrait of the operation. The call data mapped perfectly onto the network they had already begun to sketch. From the leadership down to the dealers at the bottom. Each recovered number, each intercepted call, added another irrefutable thread to the case file. Stash houses were breached. Drugs and cash were ripped out of circulation. When Rahman's property was raided, officers discovered stockpiles of Class A drugs. Direct, physical proof that his home was the Sully Line's central depot. Every seizure, no matter how small, confirmed what police already suspected. This was an industrial-scale supply network. By 2018, the net tightened. The key figures were systematically detained. The directors, the storeman, the communications man, and the dealers who poisoned the streets. Written records were also seized, ledgers that pointed to a business model that had been shamelessly profiting for years. The investigation was later described as intelligent and determined. It had required immense patience to unpick the Sully Line's intricate systems, but by the time the arrests were complete, the network was no longer invisible. Its operators were in custody, and the case was ready for trial. When the Sully Line case finally convened at Bradford Crown Court, the sheer weight of the evidence left negligible room for doubt. Prosecutors methodically presented all the evidence we've just discussed. Judge Jonathan Rose condemned the operation as wicked and greedy, a trade that ruthlessly exploited addiction and showed no inclination of stopping. It was, in his stark words, a business that never closes. The leadership echelon faced the most severe penalties. Mohammed Ayaz, 29, was handed a sentence of 13 years and 2 months. His brother, Mohammed Hassan, 26, was jailed for 11 years and 4 months. Alongside them, Tasawa Alam, 34, was sentenced to 10 years. Beneath them, the trusted lieutenants and operators, Amir Rahman, 28, received 8.5 years. Mujahid Mahmood, 28, attempted a brazen defense. During his trial, he tried to convince the jury he was living a modest life, claiming to be unemployed, insisting his last car was a second-hand Skoda, and telling the court he had a mere £60 in his bank account. He argued that if he were truly the drug dealer prosecutors claimed, he would have paid off his mortgage and be living in luxury. But just days after weaving this narrative, he vanished. Released on bail for the weekend, Mahmood exploited the opportunity to board a flight to Islamabad. He failed to return to court the following Monday. The jury heard the remainder of the case without him and convicted him in his absence of conspiracy to supply heroin and crack cocaine. Mahmood was sentenced to 10 years, with investigators later assessing his profit from the operation at just over £2.5 million, despite the mere £74 seized from him at his arrest. Years later, upon his return to the UK, he was promptly re-arrested and handed an additional 4 months for his failure to surrender. At the street level, sentences reflected their direct role in the supply chain. Harim Hussain, just 22, was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months. Her driver, Muhammad Vanid Khan, 45, was jailed for 4 years and 2 months. Others included Muhammad Zahed, 27, who received 2 years and 10 months, and Muhammad Aspan, 37, sentenced to 2 years and 2 months. David Coates, the 35-year-old former soldier, was jailed for 4 years. Shahzad Salim, 41, was imprisoned for 18 months, while 28-year-old Lukman Nazir was sentenced to 3.5 years. Finally, there was Malachi Hodgson, the 21-year-old footballer. He admitted his role, but was described by the judge as a young man of good character who had made a grave mistake. He was spared an immediate custodial sentence, receiving a 16-month suspended sentence. While the Sully Line case saw more than 80 years of prison time handed down, in Manchester, far from this organised network, another dark story was about to be exposed. Umi Noor was 37, a nursery worker and a mother of 3. On the surface, her existence was utterly conventional. She lived in Moss Side, raising her children and working shifts that provided a modest, steady income. To the world, she was just another parent, juggling the daily tightrope of work and family. But a hidden chapter was being written. No had become involved with Michael Hassan, a man nearly a decade her junior. He was 28 and already well known to the courts as a repeat Class A dealer. His criminal record included a conviction for possession with intent to supply, and he had already served 4 years behind bars before their paths crossed. Hassan's reputation was no secret. He was a man living with addiction, struggling for stability, and relying on the heroin and crack cocaine trade to fuel both his habits and his profits. Their relationship irrevocably shifted Noor's world. She was later described as being in love with him, vested to the point of taking catastrophic risks that would ensnare her in his criminal operation. They didn't always live together. Hassan would stay at Noor's home for stretches, a transient presence. But while he was there, the house became something more than a family home. Her 3 children lived amidst it all. The hiding places, the stashes, and the unmistakable signs of an operation growing in the shadows of their domestic life. This was her fractured reality. By day, a caregiver to other people's children. By night, the partner of a man inextricably bound to the drug trade. Together, they were building their own illicit network. What appeared to be a warm family home in Moss Side had morphed into a criminal headquarters. Concealed within the doors of Umi Noor's bedroom wardrobe, police would eventually uncover the nerve center of their operation. The enterprise reached far beyond the house. Hassan required mobility, and Noor provided it. Over time, she arranged for nearly 10 different rental cars at a total cost of around £7,000. These vehicles were used as transport, ferrying stock from Moss Side to Bolton, where Hassan had already cultivated a customer base. Simultaneously, Noor was making plans to open a takeaway called Taste Buds, a business prosecutors alleged was a front, intended to launder the cash flowing in from the drug trade. The case against Hassan and Noor was part of a broader intelligence effort, Operation Apostle, a Greater Manchester police initiative targeting organised drug supply. Noor's Moss Side address was one of several locations flagged by intelligence. The information was solid enough to secure a warrant, and when detectives breached the property, the grim picture became instantly clear. Noor's bedroom wardrobe held the heart of the business. The scale of the find was staggering. The drugs alone told a vivid story. 2 simple tins contained 403 wraps of crack cocaine and 363 wraps of heroin. Alongside them were bulk quantities, enough to be cut and processed into hundreds more street deals. The paraphernalia left no room for interpretation. Freezer bags, digital scales, a spoon still tainted with brown powder. This was not casual possession. It was the mechanics of supply. The immediate value of the cash was estimated at £73,000, but reports noted that once the bulk powders were processed, the total street value was estimated to eclipse £115,000. Phones and forensic analysis sealed their fate. Noor's handset, seized in the raid, contained messages placing her at the heart of the logistics. Dealers unable to reach Hassan would contact her directly to be restocked. Records also confirmed her role in hiring the fleet of rental cars on Hassan's behalf. For investigators, this was not circumstantial. It was proof of coordination and criminal intent. Noor initially attempted to feign ignorance. Her fabricated alibi, a claim that a mystery man named Rico was responsible, swiftly collapsed under the weight of digital scrutiny. A selfie linking her to Hassan, combined with the trail of messages, obliterated any doubt about who was in control. Both were arrested. Hassan faced charges of possession with intent to supply and conspiracy to conceal criminal property. Noor was charged on the very same counts. At Manchester Crown Court, the case against Michael Hassan and Umi Noor was laid out in stark, undeniable terms. Confronted with the mountain of evidence seized under Operation Apostle, both entered guilty pleas. The judge assessed Noor not as a victim of coercion, but as an active and willing participant. She was described in court as confident, capable, and fully aware of the illicit enterprise unfolding under her own roof. While she didn't live a lavish lifestyle, she was the operation's enabler, allowing it to function and flourish around her own children. Hassan, whose record was already stained, received 6 years and 8 months imprisonment for the Mossad to Bolton network. This term would run concurrently with a previous sentence. Umi Noor, 37, received 4 years and 1 month. If Noor and Hassan's downfall exposed how a family home could mask a drug empire, our next case from Bradford reveals an entirely different level of criminal ingenuity. £1 million worth of cocaine hidden in plain sight in a way no one would ever suspect. This was not street-level dealing. This was high-stakes, wholesale trafficking, built on sophisticated concealment on a scale rarely witnessed. At its epicenter was 44-year-old Farouk Mir. He was already known to the courts, having previously served time for violent disorder. By the time of this case, he had maneuvered himself into a leading role, poised to move significant quantities of Class A drugs into the city. His base of operations, Cornwall Place in Manningham. We will return to that location shortly. Working alongside him was Safraz Latif. Latif was also no stranger to the trade, with a prior 3-year sentence for drug trafficking on his record. In this new operation, he acted as the courier. His task was straightforward but critical: collect the high-value load in London and transport it north. The method they employed demonstrated chilling planning and sophistication. The canister itself was a masterpiece of deception. It was designed to look like a commercial gas cylinder. Even when the valve was turned, real gas hissed out. A brilliant, engineered safeguard designed to fool anyone who might suspect it had been tampered with. Upon its arrival in Bradford, the canister was transported to Cornwall Place, where Mir endeavoured to hide it in the basement, beneath a simple plywood sheet. The property was undergoing renovation, a perfect cover for the presence of tools and equipment. It was a logistics chain meticulously designed to keep the narcotics invisible until the very last second. But despite its sophistication, the concealment was about to fail. But while these two criminals executed their plan, police intelligence was already one step ahead. In February 2021, surveillance officers tracked the canister's journey as it arrived in Bradford. They watched as Mir heaved the heavy cylinder from the boot of his Audi and carried it into the Cornwall Place property. That single observed act was all the proof investigators needed. Within days, the raids commenced. At Cornwall Place, officers descended into the basement and recovered the canister, confirming what their intelligence had already suggested. This was no ordinary cylinder. When officers finally cut the canister open, its true purpose was laid bare. Tucked inside, insulated within the canister's shell, was a massive 14-kilogram haul of high-purity cocaine. The operation immediately widened. A secondary search was executed at an address in Whiteways. This location revealed the tools that supported the trade. A bank note counter sat ominously alongside a heat-sealing device and an angle grinder, the exact equipment required to package, seal, and disguise consignments like the one pulled from the Audi. And concealed in the garden, something far more sinister: an 8mm semi-automatic pistol, tucked beneath the steps. Officers also seized a 1/4 kilo of cannabis. The raids dismantled the entire operation in one clean sweep, bringing both men into custody. They were linked not only to the drug stash, but also to the equipment and the firearm that protected their trade. The sophistication of the plot was acknowledged, but so too was its ultimate failure. The network had been exposed. When the case reached Bradford Crown Court, the sheer scale of the discovery left no room for debate. What had started as surveillance in February 2021 had culminated in one of West Yorkshire's most audacious cases of large-scale cocaine trafficking. Farouk Mir, 44, faced a barrage of charges. He stood accused not only of possession with intent to supply Class A and Class B drugs, but also of possessing a prohibited firearm. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Alongside him, 37-year-old Safraz Latif was convicted of possession with intent to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 11 years. What are your thoughts on these intricate cases and the sentences each individual received? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this investigation compelling, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss our next case.